So this evening's class, I have got a block. I've also got a bolster and two bricks and a strap. Um, the two bricks slash bolster are interchangeable. I'm actually going to use the bolster for some of it and the bricks for some of it as well. But if you've only got bricks, that's fine. You could use those. If you've only got a bolster, you could obviously use that. We're going to come into saddle pose, which is a kneeling posture. I'm actually going to use one of the bricks this evening rather than the block, but you could use that underneath the sitting bones. So you want to make sure that both your sitting bones are resting there. And you could use the end of the bolster if you wanted to. You want the thighs close together and the toes pointing back. And we'll just sit here for a little moment. I'm going to place the right hand on top of the left, palms facing up. Fingers are not interlaced, they're just palm laying on top of palm. Some of them are touching. And I'm going to take a moment really to kind of check in, see how my back feels. Obviously the knees and the ankles, they're getting a little bit of a stretch. And take some nice exaggerated long, easy breaths in and exhalation. So not really filling the lungs to bursting point. I still want to be, taking a breath in with 10% spare space and allowing the belly to move in and out. So it really does feel like the breath is coming from the roots all the way through the tree and out through the top of the canopy. Now I'm going to allow myself to adjust just a little bit and move into child's pose. So I'm going to take the block bricks away. Allow the knees to go nice and wide, sitting now onto the heels. So pretty much keeping the legs where they were, just taking them out wider and allowing myself to come down into child's pose. Now I'm taking the knees wide this evening rather than keeping them together. Again, just keeping it nice and easy for the belly to breathe in and out. Try and let those shoulders relax and get a sense of letting gravity sink the body down. Just trying to keep this nice and passive, relaxing where I find tightness in the body. Just scanning around, just checking out, seeing how I feel from top to tail. And we'll lift up from there. Untangle the legs, just allow myself to swing them through towards the front of the mat and give them a little stretch out. And roll through the ankles a little bit, say hello to the toes, give the knees a little bit of wiggle, just encouraging the blood to flow through the knees again. I'm going to come into a bridge pose. So I want to have my feet closer to the front than the back, so there's plenty of room to be on the mat. And I'm actually going to use the block on end. You could use a brick, you could use a bolster. I find that the block is a good option. I'm going to take it landscape underneath me, and it's going to be underneath the pelvis, close to the spine where it starts to feed into the pelvis, but I want it to be on the pelvis where there are two sort of sides, a left and a right, and then the spine's kind of somewhere in the middle where your sacrum is. And I want to be on that part of the pelvis rather than sitting down near the tailbone or pressing actually on the spine. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time. You're going to take the feet, I would suggest a little wider than the hips. And then just allow yourself to use your hands to guide the block in. Check that it's flat on the floor, it's not going to roll away. And then when you're ready, allow the hands to come down by the side of the mat. Now you could, if you wanted to, lift the hands up towards the sky and drop them to the floor behind. But if that feels like it's compressing your spine and too much of a challenge, then allow yourself to bring your hands back. And likewise, we want to be able to feel that we can rest the body onto this block on its edge and feel safe and secure, and let the legs kind of release a little bit. Just wriggle the toes and feel comfortable where we are. We're trying to get to the point where the muscles across the belly feel relaxed, and when I breathe in and out, they can easily move into the diaphragm. And then see if I can let the muscles across the tops of the thighs relax as well. So letting go of the hip flexors and loosening off the front of the thighs. The hamstrings will hopefully accommodate and join in. Now with that looseness in the body, the spine will start to feel like it's sinking down. So you're very much moving away from the natural curves that we have into the spine to something that is affected altogether differently by gravity and body weight. There is a fair degree of confidence building need to be established when you're using the block in this way. So it has benefits. It's not intrusive in terms of where it supports. You can really get to the place you want to be to feel comfortable. But if you are fairly new to yoga or the yin practices, then actually using the bolster across ways underneath your pelvis can be good. It's a little bit more restorative, but hopefully you can get that same feeling of the spine starting to just relax and move in a different way. We've got about half a minute left here. So I'm now going to draw the tummy muscles in a little more, activate them, and then press evenly down through the feet. You feel the hamstrings, the thighs, and the glutes join in. You can press into the shoulders a little bit to help lift. I only need to come off that block of fraction, and then I can take it out to the side and gradually over a breath or two roll the spine down to the floor. I'm going to stay there just for a moment. Once I've reached the ground, letting the knees roll in towards each other. These pauses are important to let the joints and spine particularly realign themselves into a natural position in your body. Doesn't take long, but just a little care and attention. I'm going to roll onto my right side, the hands to press into the floor, and allow myself to lift up. I'm going to come into seated posture, butterfly pose. Bring the soles of the feet together. We don't need to bring them ridiculously close in. In fact, you could say that the further away they are, as long as the soles of the feet marry towards each other easily, that's where you want to be. This will allow for the knees to rock down a little lower. You can take a little rock from side to side, just sort of freeing up the sitting bones to start with. And the butterfly pose, we're going to take this into a little bit more of a forward bend, so it's not quite a butterfly pose, which would normally allow the spine to round in a different way. We're just going to slowly ease our way forward. Now, it's up to you whether you bring your arms inside or have them on the outside as the shins. Some people actually like to take their hands underneath the legs because they're able to get their elbows easily down to the floor, and it feels like a nice place, and they can let the head hang down as well. Breath is much more compressed here. Trying to direct the breath a little bit more into the back ribs. Encouraging the breath to stretch out all the muscles in the rib cage in different ways throughout this class. We'll begin to walk our way back up. Use the hands just to bring the legs back together and give them a little shake out. Cross the ankles over, can bring the heels in and roll onto the knees. I want to come into the front of the mat for some dragon poses. So I'm going to be on all fours to start with. And I'm going to take the two bricks, have them a little wider than the shoulders. I'm going to use all the mat there. I'm going to take a breath here and bring the right knee in towards the chest and have the fingers and toes aligned. Going to allow the back foot to just walk the knee back a little bit so that I can let the hips sink towards the floor, and then bring myself up on top of the bricks, the hands more or less underneath the shoulders, so just working that out easily in the body, and letting the front knee sink forwards. Now, I don't want to really take the knee past the toes, but it's no longer directly over the heel. The shoulders are taking quite a lot of weight. I'm trying to let a fair degree of weight through the hips as well so they can sink down. You might find that you need to wiggle your front foot a little bit out to the side to make some more space in the hip. For some people that can help. And I'm quite happy for the shoulders to sort of lift up around the ears a little bit so that they're getting some stretch as well. We're about halfway through. Now, head position, really up to you whether you drop your head or have it looking forward, whatever feels more comfortable through the neck. A nice soft belly. And I'm going to let this move the blocks out and bring myself back onto all fours, just rearranging a little bit. Again, just taking a moment to let the hips, the sacrum, the spine realign and settle. So just holding gently in a tabletop-y kind of position. And then I'm going to begin to bring the opposite foot through. Bring my bricks in. Allow myself to use the foot on the back leg, just to move that back a little bit. And then bring myself carefully up. I find if you have the palm of the hand on the block and let the fingers over the top, it seems to have a less sort of dramatic effect on the wrists. But obviously, if they do start to feel like they're being punished a little more than you want, you, by all means, feel free to just move out and adjust. Alternative is to actually have the forearms just resting on the front thigh, which obviously takes the issue of your wrists away, but it does require more balance. So you sort of win some and lose some, but there's no reason why you couldn't alternate between the two settings. And again, a really soft belly and letting the hips sink and just finding an opportunity for the body to move in to its fullest capacity. And we'll let ourselves release from there. Then move the bricks to a lower setting. Bring myself back onto all fours. Again, just take a moment, let that settle. Now, interestingly, these long sort of held poses give you the opportunity to find the tight spots, and you can really notice differences between one side of the body if you've been sort of carrying yourself a little bit, but you've been unaware of it. So this time I'm going to take the right foot to the outside of the right hand. I'm going to keep the heel more or less on the mat. I'm going to turn the toes out. I know in my body that is a help. And then I'm going to walk the back foot away. So getting a little bit more serious in terms of dropping down towards the ground. I'm going to turn the bricks more onto the sort of lower setting. And bring the sort of the end of the brick just to the fingertips, so that as I lower myself down, I'm able to rest the forearms onto those bricks. And again, you can let the body sink. Take as much weight into the shoulders, let your head hang as you wish. Your body rolls out to the side a little bit, allow yourself to go, as long as you don't feel like you're imminently going to fall over and you're struggling to hold, as long as it feels like your body can move that way. You can always adjust the foot further in or out on the front leg. That'll make a difference to how it feels as well. And then we can let ourselves lift up. So we might as well leave the bricks where they are, because in theory, should be in the right place for the opposite side. So I'm going to slide the right leg back, again, just on all fours, giving it a little while to untangle itself. And I'm going to slowly bring the left foot forwards, turning the toes out, and just walking the back leg away. And then careful bringing the forearms and the elbows onto the brick with that little bit of support. It might feel vastly different from one side of the body, or maybe it feels pretty much the same. Anything in between those two extremes would be regarded as perfectly normal. And just noticing where the space frees up. Can be quite intense on the kneecap as you sort of roll around a little bit on the side edge. Inevitably in this pose, as your hips hang down a little more on one side of the body. So blankets, towels, just turned over a few times and placed underneath those joints can make a difference. Some people like to actually place some sort of support underneath the head to hold it up rather than letting it hang. Again, your choice. as to how you want to work in this pose. Just for reference, we're holding these dragon poses for about 2 minutes each per side, roughly. You could hold for less, you could hold for longer. If you want a sort of all-encompassing stretch, then 2 minutes is generally enough for the body to free up. Certainly if you're newer to the yin practice, trying to extend it past that could be a little bit intimidating. That might be a good word to use. So maybe progress over a course of time if you want to take it further. We'll take a breath, we'll let ourselves lift up, just using the hands. And going to move the bricks towards the front of the mat, now to the side. Going to use the strap, the bolster, and the block now. Sometimes referred to as the big toe pose. Has other names, obviously, in different styles of yoga. I'm going to start with the bolster on my left side. Feet close towards the front of the mat. You need a fair bit of room to the side because we're going to let the leg hang out. So rolling the spine gently down to the floor or getting down in any way that feels good and safe to you. I'm going to use the block underneath the head and making sure it's not pressing into my neck or my shoulders. Well, that is personal choice. I'll bring the feet together and close in towards the bottom. And I've got the bolster out to the side. I'm going to push that in so that it's just starting to touch the side of my body. I guess the end of the bolster is kind of just a little above the navel, and the bottom of the bolster is towards where my toes are. So safely checking that my hip is going to be somewhere down the middle of the bolster. I'm going to take the left leg up towards the sky, and I want the strap really to go across the big toe, little toe joint. Doesn't need to be a perfectly straight leg, quite happy for that to be bent. I do want to flex the foot back and take some of the strain. I'm going to just temporarily draw my chin in towards my chest and lift my chest up towards my foot. So my spine is lifted off the back of the mat a little bit. Extend the left hand up close to the foot and then bind the strap around the fist. Allow the head and the spine to roll back. That will inevitably bring the foot a little bit closer to you. So quite a big stretch in the hamstring area. Going to use the right hand out the side for a little bit of balance. Now at this point, both of my shoulders hopefully feel flat to the floor and both sides of my back of my pelvis. Going to just adjust the strap out a little bit to make sure it feels comfortable in that leg. Take a breath and then slowly guide my left leg out to the side over a few breaths. Don't hurry. I want to try and relax the two sides of the pelvis on the back onto the floor the whole time as my leg hangs out to the side. So yeah, some people will be able to get their foot very close to the floor and some people won't. If you're one of those people that can take your leg a long way out without the pelvis rolling away from the ground or the shoulders, then simply move the bolster further from the side of your body so that you can actually sit in this with the leg on the bolster. So I want the groin to be able to open and stretch, but without feeling like it's hanging on for dear life. This is really quite a progressive stretch into the groin. Now again, you could take this a little further and you might find it more comfortable, easy to keep the hip down, by walking the right foot out towards the bottom of the mat. I'm actually going to keep the knee high. Out of my peripheral vision, I can notice whether the knee is pointing towards the sky. If the back of my pelvis is flat to the floor, my knee generally points upwards. If my hip lifts, my knee pops out to the side. So it gives me a little bit of visual feedback as to what's happening through the pelvis behind me. Now I'm going to carefully draw the leg back up. I'm mostly going to use the leg and arm 50-50 and try and exhale as I bring the leg up nice and slowly. Even though if I was working through a vinyasa class and that hip had been opened up and warmed up, I would be able to get it a good 12 inches further down towards the floor in the cold states that the muscles are at the moment for our yin practice, which is what we want. I still feel that it's quite a significant stretch on the inner groin. Now, it wasn't a problem for the outside of the hip, all those muscles around that area at all. So remember to lift again as you take the bind with the hand on the second side, and then roll yourself back. But it just shows you how sort of we can be a little bit competitive in ourselves and sort of imagine that we need to get to the same place. The yin practice, try to think of allowing yourself the time to discover where your body wants to go, rather than, oh, this is very similar to a pose I do in another style of practice, and I usually get to this point. Give yourself a little bit more kindness and work with your body. So I'm slowly going to let the leg go out to the opposite side. Remember, you might need to sort of reset and move the bolster around. When you've developed more of a regular practice, you kind of intuitively know where you need to take that bolster to, or if you were using 2 bricks underneath the thigh, one stacked on top of the other or next to each other. Yeah, I'm gonna bring the leg back up. And allow that foot to come back down to the floor. Going to just move the bolster out of the way to the opposite side and roll over. Using the hands to press into the floor, I'm going to lift up. I'm actually going to move into down dog, so coming towards the front of the mat. And I'm going to have those two bricks on end, side by side, front of the mat. And tuck the toes underneath and lift into down dog. And the block is towards the back of the mat, so I'm going to use my feet to just move that out to the side very gently and enjoy a bit of a stretch into the back of the calves and the feet. And then trying to keep the legs straight, just taking tiny steps, a few inches at a time. The feet hip distance apart and parallel is quite important. It makes it a lot easier to walk the feet in towards the front end of the mat rather than walking down the center line. And just easing the feet towards the front of the mat into a forward bend. Now, a couple of things. At some point, the heels will come onto the ground. And at some point, it will become impossible to keep your hands flat to the floor, so you can lift up onto the fingertips. We don't need to bring the feet all the way to the front of the mat because we're going to place the hands on top of those bricks, one hand on top of the other, and allow the back of the legs to open up. Now you could stay there. It's called the dangle pose. You could bend the elbows and allow yourself to fold a lot further forwards. So judge how that feels in the top of your hamstrings, the bottom of your hamstrings as they interlace into the back of the knee area, and how that feels in your lower spine. If your lower spine is grumbling, if you can feel your sciatic nerve pulling, then by all means press back down through the hands and lift the spine, have it more flat rather than hanging down. So you're still going to get the benefits of the stretch into the hamstrings, but we'll just look after the spine and make sure we don't aggravate any nerves whilst we're here. This is a loose hold. Trying to use gravity to our advantage. Now, some people will be able to take the hands away from the block and just hold onto the elbows with their hands, making a little bit of a hammock for the head to rest in. For some people, that would be, again, too intense. As the fire feels like it is burning too brightly in your body, allow yourself to adapt to something more approaching a cool, warm heat that feels good rather than searing red hot chilliness. I'm going to allow ourselves to move from there. Bring the hands to the floor, bend the knees enough for that to happen, and step back into down dog and ease the knees down to the floor. And on tabletop, and then sitting down onto the heels. I'm going to take a few twists before we finish. So I'm going to take my flat block behind the feet, smooth them out to the side, sit back down onto that block, feet out in front. To keep this nice and loose, I'm going to take the left foot underneath and over to the right side, knees pointing more or less forwards, and just going to bring the right foot over the top. I'm going to turn towards the left, so this is a fairly open side. I'm going to use the rear hand out towards the back of the hip. Now I'm able to be on the fingertips without leaning back too much, even with the block underneath. But I do appreciate that if you've got a long back and short arms, you might actually want to take one of those bricks and put that towards the back of the mat so that you can reach the floor without feeling like you're leaning back too much, absorbing weight in the shoulder. Ideally, what we want to do is just feel like we're turning the spine around on an axis point that is nicely balanced. And slowly unravel and take myself to the opposite side. And we'll release from there. Take the legs out, cross them over the opposite way. So first turning towards the right side. And tipping that across the opposite way. Release from there as well. So You could come now down into Shavasana and put a blanket over yourself on the floor if you wish. I'm going to take a much more elevated version, working a little bit more into a chest opener, Shavasana style. So I'm going to use 2 bricks and then 1 block to make the ramp. And I have 2 bolsters. I have the luxury. The first one I was using is very new and very strong and solid. This is a very old bolster and is very soggy, which is excellent for what I'm about to use it for. I'm going to lie down my back onto this bolster. So a new one that's very solid would possibly a little bit be too much for the lower back. You might want to use a rolled up blanket, that maybe 2 blankets, making it into a bit of a sausage. And then that will give you a lot more sort of malleability. Just lying back in Shavasana if you wish, or this slightly elevated version. I'm going to keep the feet close towards me and then just tuck the tailbone away from the floor so that I can lay a little bit more onto the back of the sacrum rather than being on top of the coccyx and towards that area anyway. And letting the knees hang in, palms facing up and eyes closed. And we'll take about 5 minutes here. Now loosen the jaw. You might need to wriggle it around or lick the lips. See if you can let your tongue just drift away from the roof of the mouth if it's attached. Try and have a little bit of a Mona Lisa-esque smile on your face. So no one's quite sure whether you're awake or not. Letting the knees hang in towards the center line and taking the feet a little wider. We've kind of got a bit of a teepee thing going on there. And then just trying to let my spine sink into the ground. Now, regardless of which position you're in, make yourself to breathe a little deeper. Start to wriggle your fingers and toes. For those that are lying on the ground, allow yourself to slide your heels in towards you. Give yourself a little bit of a hug. And release the feet to the floor and have a big stretch and see how that feels. For those that are on the bolster, we're going to just allow the legs to roll over to the right side, and we're going to take the arm out on the right side as well and kind of slide down off of the bolster down to the ground very gently. And use the hands to press into the floor and lift up. For those people that have had a bit of a hug and a stretch that were on the ground, you can roll onto your right side as well and lift yourself back into sitting. Now bring the hands in towards your heart as you close your eyes, taking a longer breath in. And begin to slowly exhale, letting the head drop. Finding the belly drawn to the spine, we can bow to the floor. Sealing our practice for the evening. As the breath comes back in, building the spine back up, letting the head lift and the eyes open. Namaste. Hope you enjoyed. I hope you found it a benefit and a good stretch. And I'll see you again on the mat soon.